Welcome to another edition of ToloTalks. This is a session on cable cylinders, one of the first products that Tolomatic invented in the 50s. And the first picture you see here on the screen is really a great snapshot of all the different technology ranges that you can apply pneumatically from Tolomatic, starting from the right, all the cable cylinders that we have, the different options and styles, to a very small picture of a magnetically coupled cylinder, um, pneumatic slide, and then the whole rodless family from BC4s, 3s, the original BC2 here, and the MX product line. So a wide variety of different actuators to basically do similar jobs, move loads back and forth, some of them guided and some of them using the actuator to carry the load. So way back when, Bert Tolles had an idea to start a company and have some products wrapped around that company. And one of the very first products he invented was the cable cylinder. So it was introduced about 1955. So up to that point, rodless cylinders did not exist. Uh, People bought rod type cylinders, what the picture shows here. A lot of them hydraulic, and certainly then the pneumatics industry took off in the 60s with a wide variety of different people that were making those kinds of products. So a rodless cylinder addressed the need for doing a job in half its space. So it does not have a rod extended. So obviously you can mount it in a place and save a lot of space so the body of the actuator is not in the way or sticking out from a machine. So that was like a really huge selling feature for the cable cylinder. So here we show a picture of one, a kind of over a live conveyor, rolling conveyor. Cable cylinders can be manufactured at any stroke length. We cut the tubes and machine them to the stroke length the customers prefer. And because of that, and because we can couple the tube together, like sleeve it together, we can make really long cable cylinders. We've made several that are over 20 feet and up to 25, 26 feet long. And it's just more of a function of tensioning the cable than it is how long we can get a tube and sleeve it together and put it together. So it made for great application uses where people needed long travel. They can also be isolated away from the work. Most slotted type cylinders, actuators that you buy, like a band type cylinder, a generic term, they're always where the work is. So you're connecting something to the carrier, you're moving it back and forth, and you can't keep it away from what it's doing. So if it's bagging ice, or if it's in a milling application, or it's in a woodworking application, it's right where the work's being done. With a cable cylinder, you can isolate the cylinder away from some harsher environments, and that was a huge benefit for it. And they can also be run hydraulically. So a lot of these are run pneumatically, but low pressure hydraulics, in the hydraulic world, you talk about, 1,000 PSI, 800 PSI. These are like 100 PSI and 200, and then we had one that could go 500. So what you get with hydraulics, you get that very smooth controlled motion, because you don't have that compressibility of air. So you can run them hydraulically, or even an air over oil system has been used with these cable cylinders to get them to move really smooth. And they're very economical. To this day, it's a very price conscious choice to purchase one of these cable cylinders to do any kind of application. So here's a screenshot of kind of the styles that we make. We make the standard double acting. We make a single acting unit. This is what we call a double purchase kit cylinder, where you get additional 2 pulleys and cables, and you can mount this cylinder away from the work environment and then isolate that. And then we make one that's a guided, what we call a track cylinder. So we'll go over these in details. This is kind of a screenshot of what we have. So how they go together, you start with a tube. It either could be an aluminum tube, which is black in this picture, or a steel tube, which we paint with a rust prohibitive paint blue. Inside there's a piston, a machined aluminum piston, and threaded into either side of the piston is a cable assembly. So each cable cylinder has two cables that are attached at the clevis end with a lock nut, goes around through a gland assembly that is inserted on the cable before we swedge the end on and put the terminal on. And that gland is seated in the head to prevent leakage, and then we Loctite it into the piston. So each cable cylinder has two independent cables connected inside to the piston and to the clevis on the outside. The head assembly is an aluminum head. You can three-port this head by removing the cushion, and they all have cushion adjustable features on some of the bigger units itself. So pretty straightforward how it goes together. There's options that we'll talk about: auto tensioner, brakes, switches, and Viton, and that type of thing. So we manufacture these numbers on the top of this chart, 05, 07, 10, represent the bore size. So 1/2 inch bore, 3/4, 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 4, 5, and 52 is a 500 pressure rated hydraulic cable cylinder. That's a 2-inch bore. So you can see the force ranges. The capacities go from about 20 pounds up to over 1,500 pounds. And the options that we previously mentioned are all available for all these cable cylinders. So you can get Viton seals, three-quarter head, etc. Double acting cylinders are probably the most common cylinder that we sell. And since we make a wide variety of very long ones, cable tensioning is like the crucial part of life and performance out of a cable cylinder. So this chart just simply lists below some of the options that you can get with a double acting cylinder. You can get an auto tensioner that is a 1-inch stroke. You can get two of those, one on each end. That is a 1-inch stroke. And you can get an auto tensioner that's a 2-inch stroke, and you can put it at each end. They come with the ability to put switches on these actuators. There's a magnet ring that goes around the piston. So you can get switches for the aluminum style tube, steel tube that they're not available. One of the misconceptions or maybe misunderstandings about cable cylinders is that they aren't very durable. If you look at this is from the snapshot from the cable cylinder catalog, and it's the cable specifications and some overall unit specifications. So these cable cylinders, it's a nylon jacketed aircraft type carrier arrangement. So it has wire strands that are wrapped in this 7x7 configuration, and with nylon then around this wire that's lubricated. And if you look at an 1.5-inch cable cylinder, the breaking strength of that cable is 920 pounds. So these cable cylinders, the ability to carry loads far exceeds, these cables can withstand a higher load than the cylinder can actually put out in torque. So if you have a cable cylinder out in the field and you have issues with somebody breaking the cable or somebody prematurely stretching the cable. That's probably cause for alarm. Something's wrong with the application or it hasn't been proof loaded in pre-tension. So the cable is not the weak link of these actuators. It's very, very strong. And then on the second chart, we just go through some basic specifications of bore sizes and base weights, figure out how much it costs to ship something, maximum pressure, and then this temperature rating, 140 F. You don't want to get it in an application where it's really seeing a lot of high temperature because the nylon then gets compromised and the nylon is going through the gland assembly in the head, which is providing the seal. So these are totally sealed units. They do not leak air when they're brand new, unlike a slotted type, band type cylinder. So the nylon is a part of that process. Some applications do not require having a double acting cylinder. So we make a single acting cylinder, and the difference being on one head, there's just like a square bodied head with no pulley assembly, obviously, and the other head contains the pulley. So this cable, now these cylinders can be mounted in a lot of vertical applications. We use single acting cylinders, so you can either mount it up on top of the ceiling and have the cable come down, like mounted horizontally, or simply mount it in vertical applications. So it's a cost-saving product where you don't have to have a double-acting cylinder to do the same job. And all the similar options are available on some of these single-acting cylinders as well. So we use quite a few of these in applications that would be like in a counterbalance application, lifting applications, those type of things. The double purchase kit cylinder, it's kind of a funny name for it, but what you get is two additional, so instead of having a conventional clevis that is attached to these cables, we have this bracket that holds two additional pulleys, and then you get two pulleys and two additional cables to your specified length for your application. And what this does in effect is you extend these pulleys and cables out to an area where it's actually doing the work and the cylinder gets isolated away from that work. So it doubles the stroke capacity. It's available in these 5 bore sizes, and it's a really good solution where you want to keep the cylinder safe and away from any kind of environment that could compromise its overall performance. As we continue to develop new products at Tolomatic, one of the things that customers asked for was, can you make a cylinder that can, cable cylinder that can actually, I can attach a load to a carrier and it can slide back and forth on a bearing system. So this is, we introduced a track cable cylinder. So it has two shafting material going through a carrier system that has Thompson bearings enclosed in this carrier on this aluminum block. So in the smaller sizes available at Tolomatic, 1/2 inch, 3/4 bore, 1 inch bore, 1.5 inches, up to about the maximum 78 inches of travel, you can get this guided system and actually have a cable cylinder that can guide a load. All cable cylinders, when they're used, the loads are always externally guided. Just forgot to mention at the very beginning. Sorry about that. And this now takes care of that situation. Provided the load that you're mounting to it, it can withstand that type of load. And the things we look at is how long the track cylinder is, how much load is actually on that carrier. So we look at deflection and we look at supporting that load. So a lot of these were great solutions in some travel lengths that are 2 foot, 3 foot long. And now you have something that can completely guide the load. The key to cable cylinders, like living in applications and performing millions of cycles is keeping the cable tensioned. And when the cable is not properly tensioned, proof loaded, and pre-tensioned, then what happens is it starts to get slack in the cable. It wraps itself around the pulley, and then it gets to the gland area. Instead of going in at a very straight line, it's pulled up into the gland. So it comes in on an angle and it starts to wear. It'll take some time. It'll eventually wear the gland out, that seal in the gland, or compromise the cable in a way that now air or hydraulic fluid will now come through that gland assembly. So how do we avoid that? How do we make sure that we can, keep them working correctly through the whole time? We have a couple different methods to do it. First of all, we don't pre-tension the cable cylinders because you could actually tension a cable cylinder and deflect the tube assembly. So it has to be mounted down to the framework of a machine to do this. I think a lot of customers just simply take the lock nuts on this clevis and they tighten it until they think it's tight enough and they go, it's good to go. A real easy method is this field method, is where you turn up the pressure 20% higher than the actual pressure that you need to move the load that you're moving. So you boost the pressure and you block the load from one end. And when you do that, the cable on the other end becomes loose. You simply tighten up that cable. And what you're doing now is the cable that's completely stretched, you're taking the gaps that exist in the wire strand, that 7x7 strand that we talked about that's in that cable. You're proof loading and pre-tensioning that cable, you're tightening up those gaps. And when you do that, then you get a cable that it can run to that maximum proof loaded and pre-tension number. That 920 pounds that we talked about for an 1.5-inch bore cable cylinder. Once you do it on one side, you flip that rotation and you do the other cable. The cables are connected as kind of a one-piece cable. It's connected to the clevis. It's connected to the cable, the piston on the inside, but there are inefficiencies. So the other cable needs to be proof loaded and pre-tensioned as well. And once you do that, you tighten that other cable, you'll find out that the other cable is not as slack, and then lower your pressure to the actual load pressure that you need to move, and you're good to go. So a customer would get our cylinder out of a box, he'd put it on his machine, and he'd go through this process. If he doesn't go through this process, what happens is the cable can prematurely stretch, and you just don't get the performance out of the cable cylinder over time because it wasn't pre-tensioned. So a way to avoid that and keep tightening up these clevis, the nuts on the clevis, is you can get an automatic tensioner that compensates for stretch. You still have to do the field method, some type of method to proof load and pre-tension the cable, and then we sell it with this tensioner. So on this picture here to the right, it's a pancake cylinder, it's an air cylinder, and the head is slotted. So when you have an independent air source to the tensioner, what happens is it pulls back on the pulley sheave and provides maximum tension throughout its cycle time as it's cycling back and forth. So what that does for you is, with a cable cylinder, since this terminal only has so many threads on it, at some point, a cable cylinder then, as it gets longer, you don't have enough threads on this piece to tension the cable properly. And what you can do with a tensioner then is you can order the same bore size unit, but you can have a very long stroke length actuator with the same cylinder and maintain proper tension. So a 1-inch stroke tensioner provides 2 inches of cable take up. Sounds like a lot, but when you have a 20 or 30-foot cable cylinder, you'll need that. A 2-inch stroke automatic tensioner installed on a cylinder provides 4 inches of cable take up. So remember, you can put these tensioners at either end, and this is how you can sell a 25, 30-foot cable cylinder and provide proper tension, because these cable tensioners are doing the work. So over time, as the cable stretches, and it will stretch over time in use, this cable automatic tensioner will provide the tensioning required as it's cycling back and forth. And at some point, that pulley will bottom out on the slot we see here in the picture in that head assembly, and it's time to change the cables and start the whole process again. So the real centerpiece around cable cylinders is, how do you make them last and perform and get smooth motion time and time again? You have to do this proof loading and pre-tensioning with this field method, which is probably the easiest way to do that. And then once you do that, if I have a longer stroke travel, how do I make them longer and keep the same bore size? Then you go to this automatic tensioner option that's available. So that's just like the heart of performance on cable cylinders. Cable cylinder is a very popular use, and what its closest cousin now to a Tolomatic product would be a belt drive. So pictured here on the screen is a MXBU, an unguided belt drive. It has no bearing system on it, just has that bracket, and the belt's attached to that bracket. So where people want optimal positioning, motion control, smooth acceleration, deceleration, those kind of things on a machine, it's the cousin to me for cable cylinders is just MXBU. Applications, cable cylinders, we still sell to some of the same clients that we've had for several years, and we have some kind of old photos here, but on the right-hand side, this is on a stage. We sell a lot of cable cylinders to people in the television, motion picture, commercials, Tonight Show, we sold them. Lots of applications for cable cylinders to give you some simple automation. We sell them in door openings, opening industrial doors. They're pictured here mounted to the top of this door, so they're a very good use product for that. We sell them in a lot of packaging type equipment. And this is a picture of a newspaper bundling machine where it has 2 cable cylinders to the top, and the machine is strapping and bundling newspapers. We still sell them to applications where they're slitting, corrugated paper, they're slitting big carpet rolls, they're used in Disney parks, they're used in just a wide variety of different applications in different industries to this day. And because it's a real good choice from an economic standpoint, and it's a very simple device, it's very proven technology. It's been around for 70 years now, and still going strong. So we could always use some more pictures. If you got a great picture of a cable cylinder application, you can send it our way. So summary, we're the original manufacturer of the rodless cylinder, and we started with the cable cylinder. We're the only company to offer kind of 3 different types of technologies for rodless cylinders. So whether your customer wants a cable cylinder, he might want a magnetically coupled actuator, he might want like more of a common slotted type, band type cylinder, we have gobs of options at different price points and different technologies and different advantages uh, to select from. So, as a seller of these products, you have lots of choices, which is great.